not playing to do just what I can. It's home that I working towards a goal and I give thanks for every night.
Alright, so we're here with Leela Ike tonight at the 450 listening lunch. Leela, how are you feeling tonight?
I'm feeling good, it's a good night.
Alright, Leela, so can we expect any live concert from you soon?
Yeah man, definitely. Well, I don't know, I'm on Sumfest. This is my very first Sumfest, July. I was the 19 night too, so that's something to look forward to.
15, a real life, bro. Me know all I something for the album, brother. You see me I say? And when me hear, John know that. On different men have. You see me I say? So just go on hold them, go on do it, press, no stop. I'm feeling like a chance right now. My leg to it.
So we're here with Governor tonight at the 450 album listening party. How are you feeling tonight, Governor?
Blessed, you know what I mean? Happy to be alive. Happy for the day we can enjoy some good music, you know what I mean? I feel proud of 450 because one of my favorite upcoming artists, I was one of my favorite upcoming artists and same established now 3 years in the industry. And you know, I'm an artist, I love a body of work, so the same, actually I made this step to go do this. I feel proud and feel good, you know what I mean?
You better control you. We lose character, things might just end up. Hey, me rap rock me why you don't play. When me cross, so then I cross me. Okay, you won't find nobody if you ask me.
Hi, Shania, how are you feeling tonight?
Good, I'm excited. You know, it's a new project, something to look forward to. Pieces of Me from 450. After the special invites, I definitely look forward to being here to, you know, just taking that ambience that is here right now, and I'm glad I did because it's an exciting experience.
Pieces of Me by 450 will be released on May 30th. Thank you for watching eLive. I am Navinia Beckford.
Joining us for CVM News at noon. It's Thursday, July 3, 2025. I am Curlin Brown. A new tourism bill aimed at modernizing Jamaica's tourism framework passed in Parliament on Wednesday has triggered criticism from the opposition, which claims the legislation could harm small players in the industry, including Airbnb hosts. More from Raymond Morrison.
The 70-year-old Jamaica Tourist Board Act is being repealed and replaced, with the government arguing that the updated legislation brings the industry in line with the modern realities.
All tourist enterprises will now be required to be registered. Additionally, the following tourism enterprises must also obtain a license to operate from the Tourist Board. 1. Tourist accommodations. 2. Tourist attractions. 3. Domestic tour services, and 4. Ground transportation services. So, Mr. Speaker, the new pieces of legislation, therefore, will repeal the River Rafting Act of 1970 and the following regulations and orders.
Under the new bill, certain tourism-related businesses, including tour guides, craft traders, and places of interest, must be registered with the Jamaica Tourist Board. But the opposition says it could sweep up others too, including Airbnb hosts.
But to pass something like this is wrong, given how far-reaching the implications are. So I'm urging time for the consultation, and for those who are being affected. I hear you saying you consult, but may I tell you, me know the majority of people who run Airbnb don't know nothing about this. Or the first time them I hear about this. I could just call it plain. First time them I hear about this. Give it time, don't rush it. Don't create a liability and put people in a... No, you say it's not for Airbnb, but people who are operating what you call domestic tourism. They're caught within it.
Opposition leader Mark Golden also accused Tourism Minister Edmund Bartlett of sidelining stakeholders and rushing the passing of the bill.
I note the definition of tourism accommodation, and it means any facility or premises offering lodging or sleeping accommodation to any tourist or domestic tourist for hire or reward of any kind, including and it says a villa or an apartment, for example. So clearly, this would encompass what we describe as the Airbnb type accommodation. And certain consequences of matters arise from this, because it is bringing within the scope of this regulatory regime what we know has evolved to be a major part of the tourism industry. But are they ready to be regulated in this way?
But Minister Bartlett dismissed the claims, insisting that the bill is not designed to target Airbnb hosts.
Focus has been on Airbnb, and it's unfair to say that, simply because Airbnb is not unstructured. Airbnb operates on platforms that are highly structured, for which certain requirements are made, for which they must comply, failing which they will never be on those platforms. So within its own self, there is that regulatory. And the discussions are not about them and rates per se. The discussion is about how do we ensure destination assurance.
Minister Bartlett went on to explain that the new legislation marks a step towards greater accountability in structuring the tourism sector. But the opposition insists more consultation is needed. The tourism minister agreed to suspend the debate to allow for a broader consensus. Raymond Morrison, CVM News.
Former Health Minister Dr. Fenton Ferguson is questioning how the government of Jamaica is using public funds to improve child and maternal care in the country. His concern follows reports 24 babies died at the Victoria Jubilee Hospital last month.
During my time, it was 4 hospitals. Now we are talking about 1 hospital in 1 month. 24 in 25 days, and we just finished June. So you can imagine, project called PROMAC. I want them to come to the country and tell us, which involve child and maternal health. The first of a kind that came during our administration. 21 million euros, whole heap of money. I want them to come to the country because it started with us, responding in terms of training and ambulances and all that stuff. Come and tell us what Tufton has done with that money that would have put the country in a better position almost 10 years later.
Dr. Ferguson was speaking at the People's National Party's East Portland office opening. Meanwhile, the criticisms continue to mount against the proposed rural school bus initiative spearheaded by Transportation Minister Darrell Vaz. Speaking on CVM's lead story, opposition spokesman on education, Senator Damien Crawford, raised serious concerns, highlighting a scenario where scores of students could be gathered at a pickup point, but only a handful might actually get transportation due to limited capacity.
Though the scores are there, his buses will only create a satisfactory alleviation for only 4% of those students. So if there's 1,000 students standing in this collective space, his bus can only take 48 of those. Because of the number of seats available.
Yes, and the time between trips.
And the time between
is
trips.
what you're saying.
And so therefore, while it is that if he was able to move the 1,000, it would have been a grand plan, his inability to do so. Now, the assumption many Jamaicans are making is that specific to student buses has to be government-centered, and instead of a public-private partnership. But if you go into the rural spaces, there are multiple private carriers who are running school bus services.
Yes.
And so therefore we would...
Because of demand.
Right, right. So we'd engage some of those persons as well to then do specific to student transportation. So this subsidy will allow for a person to run that specific to student transportation because they can get the reasonable...
So that point
The National Housing Trust, the NHT, has increased the loan limit for qualified NHT contributors to access up to $9 million, making it easier to purchase houses on the open market.
Home ownership is everybody's dream and everybody's path is different.
Yeah.
So what NHT has done is expanded the loan limits, whether you are going alone as a single applicant, increasing by $1.5 million up to $9 million. Now, if it's two applicants, up to $17 million. So that's $2 million that we had before. And if you're triple applicants, three of you teaming up to get that home together, it's now $23 million.
Wow.
That's a ceiling up from $21 million. Wow. So the goal is to make sure that there's more available to make it more possible to get home with NHD. Apart from the single applicant ceiling of $9 million, if you are purchasing a home on the open market that's around $14 million or less, NHT has available for you up to $12 million. So if it is $14 million or less, you could get up to $12 million.
So two persons can co-apply, whether family related or not.
Okay.
And in terms of the documentation, of course, the personal documents that you'll need will be unique to each person.
Okay.
But there are collective documents like sales agreement, valuation, that you don't need double of that, you just need one. So in that circumstance, that's what would be required. But yes, the two persons would have to come in together. When it comes to triple applicants, however, we require some kinship ties. So we don't want that one to be so loose because, of course, co-application is a serious matter.
Very well.
So therefore, kinship ties has to be established. So we will go from siblings, mother, father, grandparents, spouses, but we don't go to wide to uncles and so forth.
News at noon will continue in just a moment.
Same forklift, better deals.
Calling all foodies. It's time for Kingston Kitchen, the night market, Saturday, July 5 at Hope Garden, 5 p.m. till midnight. Grab our foodie pass for early access from 4 p.m. Get your tickets now. Visit kgnkitchen.com for info. Brought to you by Crown Water, NCB, Worthy Park, Red Bull, Red Pin, The Best Dressed Chicken, the Tourism Enhancement Fund, Rainforest Seafood, Happy Fries, Select Brands, CPJ, Guardsman, Gustazo's, Landmark, Flow, and Pure Country Juices. The Kingston Kitchen. It's the Eat Good celebration, Saturday, July 5 at Hope Garden. Let's make it a flavorful night to remember.
Are you ready for something mega? Megamart's giving away a brand new 2025 Hyundai Tucson. Second prize, a mega shopping spree. Third prize, 30,000 monthly shopping spree. Okay, break it down for them.
Spend $6,500 or more before GCT. Fill out the entry form on your receipt. Drop it in the box. That's it.
Ashman's Equipment, the new name in forklift sales and rentals in Jamaica. Top quality, low prices, fleet discounts available, 12-month warranty, free service parts, daily rentals, crazy cheap. Ashman's Equipment, same forklift, better.
Welcome back. Well, it's over a decade after Mario Deane died after being beaten and suffocated while in police custody. A ruling was handed down this week that a female police officer has been sentenced to 5 years for manslaughter, while 2 of her male colleagues have been given suspended sentences, marking a rare conviction in this high-profile case of police brutality. At this time, we're joined by the Executive Director of Jamaicans for Justice, the JFJ, Michael Jackson, to discuss the recent ruling. Good day, Ms. Jackson. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me.
Great. Just before we get into the specifics now, what was your first reaction?
The first reaction was one of disappointment. And it was a mixed one because you do see custodial sentence being imposed for the more senior of the three officers who were convicted. And we welcome that. But there was some disappointment that the other two officers who were implicated and convicted of gross negligence manslaughter would not be serving any time in prison. And while you are not automatically calling for people's liberty to be deprived, remember that this was a grave injustice against a young man, wherein he could have been granted station bail, where a young person was locked up with violent, mentally ill inmates or detainees. And you ask yourself the question, what about the human life that was lost? So we are disappointed and we share that disappointment with the family, while we also welcome the conviction that we had secured earlier on in the year.
Well, you went straight to the 2 male. Let's therefore look at the 5 years for Corporal Elaine Stewart. Does that reflect true justice, given the circumstances you just referred to?
You know, one of the things we have been struggling with as a human rights organization is our sympathy and empathy for the family here, as well as what the rule of law and the law generally dictates in a case like this. And, you know, we can't be guided by emotions. We also have to recognize the legal provisions that currently obtains. Why do I say that? I think it's important to recognize and explain to your viewers very quickly that the conviction that was secured, as you stated in your opening, it's a rare one. And because it's a rarity, wherein you're talking about the breach of duty of care was so significant that it rose to the level of criminal liability, is a step in the right direction for us as a country, where it sends a signal to law enforcement that notwithstanding any offense that an individual may have committed, you are merely depriving their liberty regarding freedom of movement because you have been detained or imprisoned. But that curtailment of certain liberties does not mean that you undermine their fundamental right to life. And I think that particular signal was sent and we appreciate it. But we also look at the reality that while this was an important conviction, there are certain starting points. When I say starting point, for example, the usual sentencing range for manslaughter would be 3 to 10 years. We are disappointed that the judge had not accepted the prosecutor's recommendation for a higher starting point of 10 years because we believe that, one, it would have resulted perhaps in a higher sentence for Stewart, and it would have, in our humble estimation, resulted in at least 1 year conviction being served for the other two officers, which is why we have some disappointment that the suspended sentences mean that those two officers would not be serving any time behind bars. So we had hoped that the prosecutor's recommendation for the starting point of 10 years would have been accepted.
Well, we're happy that you have been in contact with his mother. What's her mental state?
We've been supporting Miss Fraser by our staff members reaching and going to court in Westmoreland every day. And her mental state, as she stated publicly, she's disappointed. And while she was not expecting anybody or calling for the officers to be rotting in jail, you know, it's almost a feeling that your son's life meant nothing. But while we understand and sympathize with Miss Fraser's feeling, we laud her because we are seeing the public standing with her, that her son's life meant something. And again, because unfortunately of what occurred here, we have secured an important conviction again regarding the duty of care of law enforcement and when you are within the custody of the state.
Were there indications she plans to take this further as it pertains to a lawsuit against the state? Does she has grounds to do this? She intends to sue the state. Do you think What's your take on that?
Life lost due to gross negligence. Remember, when I know sometimes people are looking at other instances to say, for example, if you're imprisoned or under lockup, you must have committed a crime and so on. And I think this particular case here, outside of the grounds for a civil suit, it has sent a signal to other law enforcement officers that you do have a duty of care. And if you breach it, it may rise to the level of criminal liability, but certainly a civil route exists for Ms. Fraser and any other individual who was harmed while in the care of the state, especially where gross negligence played a particular role that may have resulted in significant harm to an individual, or in this particular case, the death of someone. And I think it's important for us to look at this case as a society and ask ourselves, what has changed? What are we doing differently to ensure that there are reforms to the